good idea of what it's going to look like. There's going to be a stronger relationship between counties and the TMC. TMC has a lot of data. Counties are implementing, and they have a lot of data. They see what's going on. So how do we get these two in sync when it comes to sharing this information? I mentioned there's a lot of data sources: weather data, speed data, incident data, GPS, AVL data. There's even media data. There's work zone data, social media data. I can go on and on. There's data that comes from a lot of places. How do we come up with, and you can see here is called maybe a decision support system. How do we put that into a real-time system that we can all be on the same page, right? Everybody can talk to each other with a more clear message. Here's what's going on. Here's exactly where it's going on. Here's how it's impacting traffic, right? That's one clear thing. And then more partnerships. I can't say that enough. The plan talks a lot about partnerships. How do we partner with our local planners, our local incident responders? And how do we work across those boundaries? We're already starting it, but how do we continue that? How do we continue the partnership and take things further so we can make our system work better? And that is all I have. Any questions on TSMO? Scott? Yeah, that's a good question. Scott's asking, is there any move or any conversation around partnering with other data providers like Google? Google is supporting our mission of making our system work better, right? They real-time reroute people, right? They tell people, don't go this way. Now we have a faster route available. Does anybody here use Google Maps on their phone? All right, I do too. I use it on the way down. It will reroute you when there's a problem. So do we share any information with Google? And the answer is yes and no. So yes, we share some data with them already. We plan to make this data more readily available to the outside in the future. It's a good point, because we can do the best we can talking to signs and vehicles and phones, but the more that we open up our data, similar to how we've done it with asset management, that's opened up so other developers can use it. And then, you know, if somebody's using Google Maps, if they're using OGO, we're all working towards the same goal. That's a good question. Any other questions about TSMO? Up front, yes. That's a great question. It's come up in our concept of operations. So the question was, in hard shoulder running, right? If we're going to allow people to drive on the shoulder for a couple hours a day, what do we think? How does that impact the incident management community or even maintenance community, right? That's a fair question. That's been thought about. So first of all, there's a lot of information on where exactly it's open, where exactly it's closed. When an incident happens, certain sections of it will be opened and certain sections will be closed to allow for people to get up there. But when you implement it, you don't have a shoulder to drive on, right? So part of the concept of operations is looking at putting brakes in the median to allow for turnaround. Now there's some issues with those, that's being worked out. But ideally, you'd have a way for people to backtrack and get there or turn around real close and get. So that's being looked at. It's not defined yet, but there are some potential solutions out there for how do we let people respond to that incident quickly. One thing that was found, we're not the first to do this. Some other states have already done it. They found that your typical traffic patterns during a hard shoulder running operation, it's so congested because it's usually commuters either coming to or leaving work. So they're very familiar with that area. They're very regular type of commuters. And after you get over the hump of the first couple of months, your incidents actually aren't that bad as far as number of incidents because people are moving at a fairly consistent speed. You don't have that big difference in speed at the end of a queue where you have a lot of crashes. So actually there aren't that many crashes, thankfully. So hopefully the same results here in Ohio. Good question though. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, question on hard shoulder running. Will there be a daily cleaning event? Yes, there's two things. There will be a sweep through for the freeway service patrol to go through and make sure that it's free of debris, anything like that. There will also be, I don't know about daily, but some sort of regular cleaning that hasn't been fully defined yet. And there also, anytime there's a hard shoulder running corridor, there will have to be camera coverage 100% on that corridor. Will be constantly watched by the TMC because it's not a shoulder, right? You have to philosophically think about it differently, because we are going to allow live traffic on that now to be looking for things like that. 'Cause that's usually where it ends up, is in the shoulder. So, good question. Up here, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, good question. So, question was about variable speed limits. Are we considering doing anything with variable speed limits? And the answer is yes. Again, I didn't have time to cover everything here today, but variable speed limits is something else that we are already, actually, we're probably going to implement that before the hard shoulder running. And the first pilot we're going to do is on I-90 east of Cleveland. They have an issue with weather and some incidents as well. And so we got legislation passed here very recently that gives ODOT the authority to install regulatory variable speed limit on 3 corridors. I-90 is the first one that we're going to look at most likely. It allows us to, when conditions warrant it, lower the speed limits through digital signs. Using technology. Hey, you got a snow squall coming through. It's going to impact traffic. We know traffic can't see more than 1/10 of a mile, so we know they aren't going to be comfortable going more than 30, 40 miles an hour. So lower the speeds before they get to those conditions, and then allow them to avoid running into unexpected circumstances, right? So yes, we are looking at that. We're going to start it on 90. I think right now we're looking at like maybe an 8-mile segment. That's being worked out. But space these signs so that we slow people down before they get to a problem. And again, this is actual regulatory speed, so they're going to look like black and white speed limit signs with little digital inserts, right? That'll tell you your speed limit is normally 70, but right now we're dropping it down to 60 because of congestion or weather or a work zone or something like that. So, good question. Yeah, so the question was, when we are lowering the speed limit, how does local law enforcement know? Interestingly enough, the I-90 corridor, that's selected as our first corridor. We got a lot of interest from the local police community in doing this. We are required as a state to track anytime we lower the speed, and we also will most likely check that with local forces, whether it be ODOT forces, police. They will be very aware that this is happening. It's not primarily an enforcement issue. It's more of trying to get people slowed down before they get there. But we still do need to know what the speed was at what time, because there will be some enforcement going on. So that's a good question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, good question. So the question was, when we have hard shoulder running, we're going to allow people to drive on the shoulder. How do we know the shoulder can handle traffic, number one? And number two, are we going to allow trucks on the shoulder? I'm going to speak for the 670 corridor because that's the only corridor being looked at. Right now, it was selected because it has such a wide and deep shoulder. This can only be done where you have widths and depths able to handle traffic. I think in the 670 case, the real biggest concern is super elevation, right? It's sloped the other way. Went to do some work to bring it up, and maybe a little bit of overlay to handle live traffic, but minor work to make it, right? If we have to go add all that pavement, then we're right back to where we are. The point is try to find places that already have wide shoulders, and in that case, that route will be able to handle trucks. At this time, there is no plan to exclude trucks. It doesn't have a lot of truck traffic anyway, but no, at this time, there is no plan to exclude it. And the biggest thing with truck traffic when you're looking at these corridors, when you consider the shoulder, tracking is your biggest issue. Getting around turns without the end of the truck impeding the other lanes. That becomes your biggest geometric concern. But on 670, that's not an issue for this one. Good question. Yeah. That's an interesting question. So variable speed limit on 90. The question was, will we be able to tie that into the OGO app and tell people when the speeds have dropped? That's a really good question. No, not right away is the answer. But anytime, I'm going to think about that a little bit. Anytime conditions warrant a speed drop, we will already be notifying motorists there will be a road activity or an incident put into OGO, right? So users that have already signed up for that section of 90 will get a push anyway. And of course, we have the ability to add extra information into that incident. So that brings up a good question. The technology is there. We could say there is a snow, there is a weather incident, there is a traffic incident, there is congestion, there's a work zone, whatever. We could say, here's what's going on, and the speed is reduced. So yes and no, we could. That would be a policy decision at that point. Yeah. I think that's a good point, because then you'd really be giving it to people before they maybe even get on the road, letting them know something has warranted a speed drop on this route. Haven't thought of that. Good question. Any other questions? Tom. Tom's on our TSMO steering committee.
Thanks, John. Excellent explanation of TSMO. One other thing I wanted to just drive home a little bit here to have you guys think about is, John mentioned a lot of information there, and so much of it you guys are already doing. But one thing that can't be overlooked, and it's so important to all the new managers and every manager sitting in here, no matter if you're TM, county manager, or even an HMA, is the relationships with the locals. You know, your fire chiefs, your EMS squads, your sheriffs, your state patrol captains, and all that, because this is all encompassing. You mentioned about partnerships and things. And we can't overlook, it's not just an urban thing. When this first came out several months ago, when I first went to central office back in July, I started hearing, oh, TSMO, that's an urban thing. No, it's a rural thing too. And the reason them relationships are so important is, if you think about this, I'm living in downtown Columbus, and I moved there 10 months or give or take ago from Harrison County, which is about 13,000 people, and I lived in the middle of BFE, as some people call it, okay? So now I'm downtown Columbus, and when I see an incident on I-70, 315, that's what I run every day, boy, there's a lot of EMS squads, and there's a lot of fire trucks, and there's a lot of policemen there, and a lot of flashing lights. Everybody is at their disposal, because you got cities like Upper Arlington, Dublin, so on and so forth, that have a very nice tax base. They afford very nice incident response trailers, very nice equipment, and they employ a lot of people, okay? Well, the county I came from, there's one sheriff. There's maybe one or two part-time or full-time deputies, and then everybody else is part-time. There's not a full-time fire department in Caddis, Ohio. It's it's volunteer. So what's that do? That takes time for them to respond to things. So when J.D. Marlette has a tanker roll over that's hauling frack water or something like that, who's out there first? ODOT. ODOT's out there first. Who arrives second? Usually the sheriff. And that sheriff is quite demanding at times, and things I think he probably thinks he's Franklin County Sheriff, I think at times. But anyway, we have to have relationships where I'm going with that, because them volunteers are running the fire trucks and volunteers are running the ambulance stuff. They're cooking pizza. They might be coal mining out there in Harrison County. They might be working at a oil well somewhere. It takes them time to respond. In Columbus and everything, everybody's there within minutes. So that's why them relationships are so important, because we all know the fire chief is in charge of the scene. However, that fire chief, he might be working 30 miles away before he gets there, 40 miles. It might be a long time. So building them relationships to get them to understand whether they're on US 22 in Harrison County or I-70 in Columbus, the object is to get the road clear so we don't have secondary accidents, to get our people and their people off the road so they don't get hit. The secondary crashes is huge when we have a road shut down and things. So again, the relationships you build locally impact the state globally, statewide. So build those relationships, get out there and shake them hands, have them partnerships with the county engineers, the fire chiefs, the EMA squads, all those folks. Know them on a first name basis. Buy them a coffee, go have coffee with them or something like that, and build them relationships so we can keep the traffic moving. So with that, is there any other questions? We're still running behind? We're waiting, I should say. Okay. Who does not know the Who Knew Guru? All right, good. No hands went up. Perfect. Well, this is a little improvisation here, because he's running about 15 minutes late yet. He told us he wasn't going to be here until about 25 after. So when he gets up here and Joel introduces him, I want everybody to stand up and pretend like you're going to walk out. Okay, right after he, all right, now I see what his reaction is to that. We got about 15 minutes or so, roughly, before he's supposed to show up here. I got a couple little incidental things. Hugh Southern, please come up here for a second. Here's your badge. But it's going to cost you. If you guys don't know, Hoop is, we call him Hoop out in District 11. He is the morel mushroom king of District 11. And so if you want to hit him up here the next couple of days, yeah, you got pictures, right? There you need to put it up on the screen. There you go. Look at all of them. Make sure he shows you that phone. There you go. Look at that. You need to pass that around. Let everybody look at that. That's probably just from this year, isn't it? One day. Yeah, yeah. And then the other second thing, is there a Mike Stansbury in the room? He just walk out. Somebody snag him out in the hallway. He must have knew it was coming up. Well, where's Steve at? I tried, Steve. We'll catch him later. All right. It's 4:07. Let's take 10 minutes or 10-minute break.